Hey, Stacey David here with the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. Now, what is this? Well, it's a podcast that covers everything automotive, everything mechanical, everything that's just cool about the automotive lifestyle. Now, today's episode is brought to you by IDIDIT. All right, let's get rolling. All right, everybody knows how important the steering is on your project. If you don't have steering, you ain't going anywhere. And, you know, one of the biggest changes that happened in the hot rod world was the advent of aftermarket tilt steering columns, hot rod steering columns, all that kind of thing, because you used to have to get that stuff in junkyards. And one of the premier companies that brought that to light was IDIDIT years ago. And they are now, you know, an iconic name in the industry. So we're going to talk a little bit with Trevor Cornwell there from IDIDIT and talk about kind of what they've got going on, what kind of new things they're doing, and how they help people hold on to a steering wheel when they're driving their cars. Trevor, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, Stacey.
All right, so let's talk about your background, you know, as a hot rod background. You grew up with cars, or, you know, you Ford, Chevy, Dodge guy? What's your background?
Yeah, I was always a car guy. When I can remember when I was a little kid, my dad, bought me a subscription to Hot Rod magazine when I don't even think I was a teenager yet. And so I was already kind of dreaming about what my first car would be and all that. And then, I can remember when I was a kid, my dad would be laying underneath the car, working on it, fixing it, whatever. He kept feel something hit him or whatever, and he'd turn and he'd look, and there I was laying under the car next to him. This is like, after I could walk or whatever, and so I have very early memories being in the garage, helping my dad out, pulling tools out of the toolbox for him and that kind of thing. So,
and what kind of cars was he working on? Did he have something he liked specific, or?
When I was little, he had a little Datsun 240Z that he worked on. And then he had a Ford F-250 crew cab that was daily driver. And for a while he hauled travel trailers and things like that with it. And, had the old 306 in it, and he worked on it to keep it running, whatever needed to be done when it blew a head gasket or, bent a push rod or whatever.
Oh, the old Z cars, man. I've done many, many of those. I used to race those, SCCA.
Oh.
And, you can pick them up cheap at the time. I mean, you could pick them up $50, $1,000. Those days are long gone, man. Have you seen the prices of those recently? Like a 240?
I haven't. I've been seeing them at SEMA, and people have been redoing them, and they look fantastic.
Yeah.
I have not seen what they are now.
Oh, they're bringing $30,000-$40,000. So what's going on at IDIDIT? What kind of new stuff do you have out? I saw some of your stuff out there at SEMA. Very cool. Yeah,
we're always trying to not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but trying to keep moving things forward. But as people are doing more later model engine swaps, the LT or Coyote, there's no power steering on a lot of those engines. And so one of the things that has been a growing demand is electric power assist steering, working with a company that's been doing it for several years. And we've worked with them, applied them with steering columns, and we've kind of expanded on that with them. We've kind of formed a partnership, and so we're developing a lot of direct fit applications that bolt right in. There's universal applications you can come up with something on your own, but electric power assist is very popular right now.
Yeah, and now for the people that are listening and they've never seen this before, basically you do away with your power steering pump out on the motor, and it's a little unit that goes right on the steering column and doesn't take up a whole lot of room. And it gives you electric assist, and the engine doesn't have to be running, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so you can reach in there with two fingers, and you can, when you're pushing the car around in the garage, and you can turn the steering wheel and turn the wheels. It's a really cool setup. When these units first came out, they were very expensive. So what is your sell for? And what kind of applications do you have for this?
The electric power steering unit on its own retails for around $1,500, which is probably the higher end of the market. But these are OEM quality motors where a lot of the stuff that's on the market now is just kind of it's imported, not a high quality product. These are OEM grade motors, and you can buy a different amperage motor depending on what type of application you have. If it was if it's like a little car like a Mazda Miata or maybe a 240Z, something like that, you could get away with a smaller motor. It's a 55 Chevy with a big block in the front. You're going to need a heavier motor, and there's options for all of those.
And when a guy goes to order something like this, do you have like guys on staff that come on the phone and kind of recommend, what is the best, or is it in your catalog? How do people go through it? Because it's kind of a new product. It's a new way of thinking.
You can go online. You can see us at IDIDIT.com, or you can give us a call. We have a full sales staff that works all week long. You can chat with us online. You can call us. You can email us. But yeah, they have a list of applications that we can help with, and then we have people trained that if it's a kind of a custom application, they can make recommendations for that.
Now, the big question that people ask about this, they ask me all the time on it, is it glitchy? In other words, is it smooth? Is it even? Because there's a certain feel, and it's kind of like, when the drive-by-wire stuff came out, it has a different feel than a regular cable gas pedal. The question people have, that they're asking me is, okay, when you drive one of these, does it feel different than your traditional power steering or your traditional steering?
It feels smoother to me, and it has an adjustable, gain on it. I'll say there's a little potentiometer or knob, I should say, that you can adjust the sensitivity of it. Typically what people will do over a period of week of driving or whatever, they'll get it to a point where, you don't want it to be so much assistance that when you're driving down the road, a little movement moves the car. So you'll dial it back, but you don't want it so little that when you get into a parking lot, you can't turn the wheel. Once you get it dialed in, it's very smooth. And then there's a new option where you can add a GPS speed sensor.
Yeah.
And it would actually, at the low speeds, it'll increase the assist for like parking lot and things like that. And then at higher speeds, it decreases the assist, so you get a little bit more road feel.
Oh, that's awesome. I hadn't seen that. That sounds awesome. Okay, so when a guy goes to put one of these in, say if you're looking at your traditional hot rod type setup, where the motor would be on the outside of the firewall, you have those, but you also have very short ones for guys that are putting it inside between the steering wheel, or the steering column hanger and the firewall, correct?
Right.
So what else do you guys have coming out? I know you got some other cool hot rod columns that I saw.
Yeah, we've always had a lot of hot rod applications. That's really where we got started. And so we have lots of applications for hot rod. We've been trying to make an entry into kind of a performance market with lightweight steering columns, drag applications, and very lightweight. Some of them weigh, a little over 2 pounds. They're aluminum. We've been expanding a line of quick releases.
Yes.
We purchased Schroeder steering back in 2018, and we've been kind of expanding the applications, making quick releases that fit onto an IDIDIT steering column and look like part of the column or look like it should belong there, or kind of disappears, I guess. Once you bolt the steering wheel to it and put it on our steering column, it doesn't look like there's a quick release there, but a lot of the drag and drive guys are fans of that.
Yeah, I just featured one of those on our Cheetah last season, putting it on there, and I have to say it is really cool looking. You can't tell it's a quick release. It pops right off of there. It's safe. It's just, if you have a tight cockpit, a race car, or just a street car that you have trouble getting in and out of, need to take that steering wheel off, this is a great setup, and it doesn't look like a competition car. It actually has a nice look to it. I was very impressed with that. You guys carry steering wheels too, right?
We do. We resell some steering wheels. We try to carry, high quality, whatever we sell. We try to carry the highest quality that we can get. You come to us, you get your steering column, your steering wheel, if it needs an adapter, and any, shafting or U-joints that you would need to install it.
Yeah. Now, you guys' steering has always been your bread and butter. You guys pretty much wrote the book on aftermarket steering columns and that kind of stuff. Are you branching out into anything else, or are you staying pretty much focused on just steering and steering style things?
It's really pretty steering centric is what we've been working on. Yeah, really anything around the steering column is what we've worked on. We've released some accessories and things like that. We've developed some things, wiper controls, and if you want to put your headlight dimmer on the steering column, we developed some electronics kind of around those areas. But it's all still very closely related to the steering column.
Yeah, and you guys out there, if you're working on a hot rod or any kind of just a custom vehicle, whether it's a square body Chevy truck or or a later model vehicle or something like that, and you have some steering column issues, man, you need to check these guys out. I mean, I used them on Sergeant Rock. I've used them on almost every project that I've done over 20 years. You guys always have a solution. And if not, you've developed something to have a solution. So just been a great company to work with. Do you guys still do custom lengths on steering columns?
Of course. Yeah.
See, that's one thing that people don't realize. They'll order it and they'll go, oh, well, I need a 30-inch column. And maybe you don't carry that. Well, you'll make it. Correct?
Right. Our tagline, since I've been here is, if you can dream it, we will build it.
Yeah.
I think we're the only one in the industry that really will, we'll start with a clean sheet. And if you tell us what it is that you would like to build, we will build it for you. A lot of times it's just, well, maybe you need it 1 or 2 inches longer or 1 or 2 inches shorter. Mm-hmm. We've been able to do that, and it's not a big deal as long as it's, kind of lengthening or changing something.
I'll tell you what, one of the things because anytime you say custom make something, dollar signs start flashing. People are like, oh, it's like you either buy a set of headers or you have them custom made, and there's usually $5,000 or $6,000 difference. And one of the things with your columns, with the custom columns, they're not real expensive. They're not a whole lot more. You guys really have it dialed in to where you can do the custom columns.
I think at the current time, it's only, depending on how complex it is, it's only a couple $100 upcharge that we would charge.
One question that I get a lot is, what are some of the most important upgrades that a person can do to a project? Whether it's a high-end project or just to get it running and driving kind of thing, are there a few things that you recommend that pretty much everybody has to do? And there's 2 for sure. One is a wiring harness and one is a steering column. Now, you might be thinking, wiring harness, that's obvious, but what's a steering column thing? Well, the problem with old steering columns is that they break. They're not compatible with most of the aftermarket wiring and components that you're going to be using. Putting in an aftermarket steering column is really a wise thing to do. And the guys at IDIDIT have been doing this forever. Now, they started in the street rod world, but don't make the mistake of thinking that their applications are just street rod, hot rod, that kind of thing. Because they also have direct bolt-in columns for muscle cars. They've got them for four-wheel drive vehicles. They've got universal columns that you can shorten. That's what I put in Sergeant Rock. I've used their columns for years, and they are one of the staples that I recommend that somebody puts in pretty much any vehicle, because it's what you're holding on to. It's what controls a lot of your wiring, your turn signals, whatever you've got it set up for. And it's nice to be able to put a tilt column into an old vehicle. If you're upgrading your vehicle, if you're getting ready to drive it on the road, you may want to think about a steering column. And if you do, check out IDIDIT. You'll be happy with what you find. What's your most popular finish on the columns? Black, brushed, or chrome?
The last time I checked it, it was black powder coat. We have a really high quality black satin powder coat. We have a very high quality very high bar for the powder coating finish. Mm-hmm. We've worked with our supplier that does a lot of our powder coating for us, just to kind of fine tune that. It's not going to be orange peeled or anything like that. It's going to be a really nice satin finish when you get it.
There's kind of like the big 3 that I kind of point people toward. For a steering column, it's IDIDIT. For a wiring harness, it's Painless. And for air conditioning unit, it's, Vintage Air. Now, there's other companies out there that make great products as well. That's my next question. How do you keep an eye with what's going on in the aftermarket so that your columns are compatible with a Painless harness or a Ron Francis harness but some of the other wiring harnesses and some of the other, the Borgeson, U-joints and things like that? How do you keep everything to where an IDIDIT column will fit pretty much whatever a guy's putting in?
I know that we've worked with them in the past. We've worked very closely with Painless. We work closely with American Auto Wire, and I believe most of their kits have instructions for if you have an IDIDIT column, use this adapter. And the adapter that we use, I believe, is already included with those wiring kits, so it's virtually plug and play. And
it's pretty much all based off of GM style, correct?
Correct. We do sell some Ford columns that have a Ford wiring and Ford, connectors. We have some Chrysler columns
Mm-hmm.
that have adapter harnesses that would integrate into the factory harness. What we sell is a retrofit kit. We advertise it that it's you would bolt it directly in, integrates with the factory wiring, and we try to stay really true to that.
And that's good, boy. When it comes to hooking things up, you want it as simple as possible, especially when it comes to wiring.
Yeah, it's not. A lot of the aftermarket kind of forgets about that. It's like they produce a really nice product, and then you get a bag of, some butt connectors and some zip screws and things like that. And that's not the philosophy that we've taken when we've developed things. It's try to make it as good as OEM or better.
Yeah. A lot of times that's engineers or people with an engineering mind that's putting that together. So when they try to write the instructions, they don't realize they're talking to a guy that's maybe never done a wiring harness before or a hookup before. They're like, yeah, just plug it in. It's like, just plug it in.
Right.
You got to put the connectors on. You got to hook them up. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. Do you get a lot of questions from people about fitment and trying to fit columns and stuff?
Yeah, we do. It's very, very common. People don't understand how would they measure their vehicle for a steering column, or what do they need to be aware of as they're measuring it. Of course, if it's a resto modding a car or something like that, a lot of those applications we've already developed an application for. But if it's a rare car or maybe it's a hot rod custom car that they're building, they're going to need to know where do they want the steering wheel to be.
Yes.
And it's usually one of the last things that you'd want to put in the car because you want your seats to be in there. You want to be as close to the finished interior compartment as you can so that you can get an accurate dimension there.
One of the biggest things that I see, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they'll go like from a factory steering column and a factory steering wheel, which has whatever dish it might have come from the factory. And then when they measure, they don't factor in the adapter for the steering column plus the dish of the new steering wheel. Man, that can put you 4 or 5 inches off. And all of a sudden, their steering wheel is up against the dash or it's back in their chin, and they're like, well, that's got to be frustrating for you guys. If someone says, hey, I want a steering column for a 34 Ford or a 72 Camaro, or they're using a different steering wheel kind of setup to get them to understand that. How do you guys handle that on your tech lines and stuff?
On our webpage, we have a guide on it explains, how do you measure the steering column. Our tech line, of course, they would walk somebody through that, how to measure it. Typically we say from the top of the sleeve, which is the uppermost visible part of the steering column, to the tip of the shaft that's going to interface with the steering box or an intermediate shaft or a rag joint or something like that. And those are that's the lengths that you would need to get. But the other thing you have to think of is it a column shift? Is that column shift lever going to run into a dash or something like that? There's a lot of other things you got to think about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How are you going to hold it under the dash? Is there going to be is there a factory mount that you can attach to, or do you need an aftermarket mount? Which we do sell those for street rods and things like that. Where the wire comes out of the steering column could affect the column. Yeah, our staff here would walk somebody through all those things and make sure they check all those boxes and figure out make sure that they've thought about those.
That's a pretty big thing. That's you put as much thought into that as doing a motor swap. Sometimes more, little detail things. Man, you get that off, and your turn signal levers are going one direction, or you're covering your gauges with it. I mean, putting that column in that Cheetah, I mean, there was no room. So I had to dial that column in just right to where the turn signals weren't covering the gauges on the dash, but not hitting my knee down below. And I probably had maybe an inch and a half of leeway there. Let me ask you this, changing the subject a little bit. What kind of vehicle do you have? Do you have a project vehicle you're working on?
I do. I have a couple. I've got a pickup truck that I've got a pickup truck that I just got back together last year. I dropped a valve at the beginning of COVID, and it's a 99 Silverado, new body style.
Nice.
And I had a little bit of scope creep with the engine rebuild. It got bored out. It got a stroker crank in it, but it's got like a 403 cubic inch. Started out as a 6 liter. Now it's a 6.6 liter with a supercharger on it. And I take that up at do some off-roading with it. It's 4-wheel drive with a kind of a mid-travel
nice
suspension kit on it, and King shocks, that kind of thing.
Oh, so you went that route. Very nice. Regular cab or extended cab or?
Regular cab is a short box step side.
Nice. I love that truck. I'm looking for that exact truck just in the GMC. But I love that body style. How much lift do you have on it?
It's got to be like 6 inches.
Oh, so you what size tire are you running, man?
I want to say they're 36. Is that? Yeah, it's like a it's
truck.
on like a 20-inch rim. It's got some stance to it.
That sounds awesome, man. So have you always been into trucks, off-roading?
A little bit. Not. Yeah. I have some friends that are. I would consider them more off-roading. They build some really hardcore like rally or not rally, but like pre-runner type stuff. One of our engineers here, he's got a Bronco that he did a whole long travel setup on it. Mm-hmm. We have some dunes here in Michigan where we can go off-roading, and they got some really nice vehicles out there, and a lot of my buddies do that. But I started to head that way, but it's like I can still drive it to work,
Yeah.
It's a little bit more tame than what they got. Typically the drags I can outrun them, but you hit the whoops and they'll leave me in the dust.
Yeah.
And then I got a 79 Fairmont that I bought in Arizona.
I love it.
Couple decades ago.
Yeah.
And it's my second Fairmont. This one I bought, it was super clean, and I've on the third engine on it that I built for it. So it kind of got mothballed 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm kind of starting to dust it off. And it's got it actually has a Terminator engine, the 4.6 liter Cobra, 2003 Cobra engine. When I first started doing it, this was like early, I guess it would have been late 2000s when I first put a 32 valve V8 in it, and nobody was doing it at the time.
Oh yeah.
Now it's kind of the thing to do, but I kind of had a struggle. There wasn't all the resources that people have to do that that there are now. It's a blast. It's got an 8.8 rear in it. It's baby blue, and it's the greatest sleeper.
Is it a 4-door?
No, it's a Futura. I like the understated.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan of the understated, and so I bought this car because it was an old lady was driving it before I bought it. And so I thought, this is something I can drive, and nobody's ever going to imagine that I have anything under the hood of this thing. But I get more conversations driving that thing, go to the gas station, I'm pumping gas, and guys, people come over like, I had a car just like this, when I was, my first car, if I take it to a car show, people are just drawn to it.
I love that kind of stuff. People they're tired of seeing the same old Camaro and Mustang and stuff like that. Nothing against those. I love those as much as the next guy. And there's something different there. like a Falcon or a T-Bird or an Impala or something that you just don't see much, or whether it be a late model or whatever. I love to see that, and it helps the hot rod world grow. I always ask this question to everybody. Okay, so first of all, if you could have any vehicle, what would it be?
I've always said like a 64 Lincoln Continental is kind of my dream car, I guess.
Really?
Yeah.
Lincoln Continental. That's a 64.
Yeah. Convertible, with the suicide doors.
Suicide doors. So you like the big Luxo muscle stuff. You and Matt Graves, man.
I don't know if they'll, by the time I get to that point in my life where I have the room and the time to do that, I don't know if they'll be in the price range that I can afford it anymore. It looks like they're becoming more and more popular, I guess. When I first started thinking about this, they were like maybe $10,000 cars. Now they've, doubled or tripled in price.
The good thing is that because they're odd and there's not a lot of aftermarket for them, and it takes a lot of effort to build them, but it keeps the prices down. It's just not the easiest thing to build. It takes a real commitment, and it takes a real builder to build one. I'm doing this 40 Chevy on the show, and it's a hot rod. And there's a big difference between a hot rod and a muscle car and a street machine and a cruiser. When I say those titles, a certain image of a car comes to your mind. That's a cruiser, that's a sleeper, that's a gasser, that kind of thing. And we tend to break things down into categories. So when I use the term hot rod, give me 4 or 5 things, 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, ingredients that car or truck has to have. If you look at it and go, that is a hot rod.
I would have to say, it's
a tough question.
Talking, it is because you've got like rat rods and people kind of blended the lines a little bit. But if it's a true hot rod, I'm going to say it has to have flashy paint, some nice probably chrome wheels or polished aluminum wheels, something like that.
How about stance?
stance. It's got the stink bug stance. It's got to be
okay. Down in front, up in the rear.
Big tires. Yeah, big tires in the rear, little in the front. I'm kind of thinking like exposed engine V8 up front.
And the big question: stick or automatic?
In a hot rod, I would go stick. Yeah.
Honestly, the crazy thing is, pretty much everybody is across the board on that. This will be surprising, except for Gene Winfield. Now, Gene Winfield is the quintessential hot rod guy, but he was like adamant, automatic. And the reason being, when I asked him on it, he said because it's all about speed. It's all about times, and you can't argue with the consistency of an automatic on a drag strip. It may not be quite as fun, but see, so that's where he was coming from, which is why I ask everybody has a little different take on this. And the reason I ask that is that, when you get people that are out there that are just starting to build cars or starting to get into it, it's very easy for them to follow people that they recognize or know or whatever, and they can get caught in a trap of like, well, so-and-so did it this way, so that's the way to do it, even though they may hate that color or that stance or that motor or whatever. So I try to encourage people. It's like it really comes down to what you like. Well, listen, Trevor, I appreciate you dropping by. Next time you're in the area, man, come on by again. We'd love to have you back on.
Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right, that's our show for today, which means you need to get out there and start working on something. Spend some time turning wrenches. You might be surprised how much you like it. Also, don't forget to check out IDIDIT's website. If you have any need for a steering column or steering components, they are the guys to talk to. Make sure you check out our website, staceydavid.com, because we've got all kinds of new products and some other great stuff that you're just going to love. Also, make sure to check out our social media. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all at Official Stacey David. Our social media is where you're going to find all of the bonus content, the giveaways, the contests, the trivia. We even have extra viewer projects that focus on what you are working on. Also, the new season of Gears will be on MAV TV, and YouTube will be the place that you can view all of your favorite Gears episodes, as well as the full project builds that follow the project from beginning to end. Make sure to check out our new Gears coffee cars. This is a unique blend of coffee and cool stickers to collect that will appeal to anyone. All right, that's all the announcements. We're all up to date. We'll see you next time.